Biden proposes a $2 trillion package to improve America's infrastructure. But what's in it, and how much of it actually goes to infrastructure? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Hey, if you like the show, be sure to subscribe and turn the notification bell on. So, President Joe Biden has unveiled his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. It's called the American Jobs Plan.
What I'm proposing is a one-time capital investment of roughly $2 trillion in America's future, spread largely over 8 years. It will generate historic job growth, historic economic growth, help businesses to compete internationally, create more revenue as well.
The Biden administration has also been selling this as a way to position the United States to outcompete China. But $2 trillion is a lot of money, and it's pretty controversial. So where is all of this money going? The answer is infrastructure and stuff. The Washington Post breaks it down to 4 categories. One is transportation infrastructure, $621 billion. That includes highways and bridges, public transit, rail, electric vehicles, airports, and a few other things. Some of that is pretty vague, like transportation inequities. That's $45 billion to address historical inequities, like connecting neighborhoods that have been cut off from public transit. But most of the $621 billion is pretty standard infrastructure stuff. But that's less than a third of the $2 trillion. The second category of spending is called infrastructure at home. That's $650 billion. It includes clean drinking water, high-speed internet, electrical infrastructure, affordable housing, and education. You might say some of that is not infrastructure. And I'd say, wait till you see the next category of spending. Which brings us to research and development, workforce development, and manufacturing. That's $580 billion. And the fourth category of spending is for the caretaking economy, $400 billion. It covers care for elderly and disabled people. And finally, there's the part where I point out how those 4 categories add up to more than $2 trillion. It's actually $2.2 trillion. But hey, what's $200 billion in taxpayer money between friends? Oh, and then there's the note where the Washington Post says the White House said infrastructure at home would cost $650 billion, but it actually adds up to $689 billion. But at this point, $39 billion missing dollars is just chump change. And when $39 billion is chump change, you get a picture of just how big the American Jobs Plan is. And you start to see why it's so controversial. Both Republicans and Democrats at least largely agree on one thing. America's infrastructure could use some serious improvement. The problem, though, is that there are very different views on what constitutes infrastructure. Republicans have a much narrower definition: roads, bridges, waterways, ports, and airports. And that's just the first $621 billion. Democrats, however, have a much broader definition. To them, infrastructure means all that, plus clean energy, high-speed internet, workforce training, and apparently elderly care. To be fair, those last 2 things fall more under the jobs part of the plan than the infrastructure part. Let's just hope Biden doesn't put this guy in charge of elderly care. All I have to say is if we're spending $2.2 trillion on this, some of that infrastructure better be going to feeding the New York subway rats. Remember, pizza rats don't want a piece of us. But let's look briefly at one of the things in Biden's plan: clean energy. Biden wants to create 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations by 2030. His infrastructure plan calls for 20% of all school buses to go electric, as well as the entire U.S. Postal Service. Hey, if the government can't make the post office efficient, at least they can make it energy efficient. Biden's proposal also includes $100 billion in funding to update the country's electric grid and make it more resilient to worsening climate disasters. Biden brought up the recent Texas snowstorm blackouts to make this case. He also wants to build, renovate, and retrofit more than 2 million homes and housing units to become energy efficient and survive natural disasters. To be fair, that's a better plan than Senator Ted Cruz's plan to address the Texas snowstorm blackouts, which was to fly to Cancun. So with the Biden administration ready to spend $2.2 trillion on jobs and infrastructure, where's the money going to come from? I'll get to that after the break. Welcome back. How does President Biden hope to raise $2.2 trillion to fund his American Jobs Plan? Mainly by raising corporate tax rates. Under his plan, that would go from 21% to 28%.
No one should be able to complain about that.
Oh, but they will. Under President Obama, the corporate tax rate had been 35%. In 2017, President Trump slashed it to just 21%. That put the U.S. corporate tax rate on par with most other developed countries. By the way, Nordic countries, the socialist ones, have corporate tax rates of between 20 and 22%. Biden wants to raise it to 28%. When combined with state taxes, it'll end up at about 32%, depending on the state. There is concern that this will make more U.S. companies want to move their operations abroad. So to prevent corporations from doing that, Biden wants to raise the global minimum tax to 21% and close corporate tax loopholes. Well, I'm sure that'll work, because if there's one thing billionaires are bad at, it's finding ways to hold on to their money. But Biden says, don't worry, we can afford to do this. In fact, we can't afford not to do it. And he only plans to raise taxes on corporations and the rich.
I start with one rule. No one, we say it again, no one making under $400,000 will see their federal taxes go up, period.
That's not exactly true, because Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, announced during a press conference that the threshold of $400,000 refers to family income, not individual income. That means a lot more people will see higher taxes. So the idea is to pay for the American Jobs Plan by raising taxes on corporations and the upper middle class and wealthy. Biden is open to suggestions, though.
But let me be clear. These are my ideas on how to pay for this plan. If others have additional ideas, let them come forward.
And Republicans did indeed come forward to criticize the bill. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is not Republican but is obviously pro-business, is calling Biden's proposal dangerously misguided when it comes to how to pay for infrastructure. It also says the proposed tax increases will slow economic recovery and make the U.S. less competitive globally. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, and the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank, point out that Biden's plan proposes doubling the capital gains tax from 20% to almost 40% for those who make more than $1 million a year. Higher capital gains taxes mean more tax revenue, but only when people sell their stocks. And with high taxes, some investors will just hold on to their stocks and wait until more favorable tax laws are in place. Higher capital gains taxes also make it harder for companies to raise money through public share offerings. This especially hurts small startup companies, whose stock is riskier to invest in. So it's bad for competition. Even the Tax Policy Center, a left-leaning think tank, says that some low and middle-income households may bear a modest share of the corporate tax hikes based on the version of the tax plan that Biden campaigned on last year. The Heritage Foundation and Cato Institute also point out the irony behind the corporate subsidies included in Biden's infrastructure plan. They say it's ironic that Biden is giving hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies to corporations that own electric vehicles, broadband services, and technology facilities, while railing against corporations for not paying their fair share. His approach towards raising corporate taxes might even reduce investment in the same infrastructure that he proposes to subsidize. Speaking of subsidies, Biden's American Jobs Plan will also put more than $100 billion towards early education, K-12, and community college. That's in addition to the nearly $170 billion for education in the COVID relief bill that Biden signed just a few weeks ago. So when you add together the taxpayer dollars that Congress appropriated for education since March 2020, it comes out to a staggering $282 billion. An email from the Republican National Committee says that Biden's infrastructure plan is not really about infrastructure, but another multi-trillion-dollar far-left wish list. But that's not what people on the far left think. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that Biden's plan needs to be way bigger. And she means way bigger.
We're talking about realistically $10 trillion over 10 years.
As my third grade teacher, Mrs. Dorfenhanger, said, always think big, especially when you're spending other people's money. But depending on what you think of Biden's infrastructure plan, the good/bad news is that it's going to take a long time to get through Congress. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi thinks the House of Representatives will vote on the bill sometime in July, and then it has to go to the divided Senate. Plus, the bill is controversial even among Democrats, which is one reason why the White House is trying to sell the infrastructure plan directly to the American people. They hope that getting popular support for the bill will motivate Congress to act. So, what do you think about the American Jobs Plan? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers. So visit patreon.com/America Uncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making episodes like this. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.